said, I want you to go.
I want to stop riots, I want to see them end, but I must confess that the largest job of stopping riots will be in the hands of those who lead the city politically.
Daly?
And yes, Mr. Daly. I think he can do much more to stop a riot than I can. I'm not going to serve in the role of a fire engine. I'm not a fire engine. I'll do all I can. But until the conditions are removed which make for riots, many of our pleas for nonviolence will fall on deaf ears.
So John Doerr, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, and I went out there. And we decided to go see Martin. Martin didn't know we were coming. And so we get there, and we knock on the door. And the place was packed with people, young men sitting everywhere. And soon it became clear the people who were in the room were the toughest kids in Chicago. They were gang kids. And here's Martin Luther King, Nobel Prize winner, one of the most famous men in the world. And he's having a seminar on nonviolence with them. And it went on for 4 hours after we got there, 4 hot hours, sweaty hours, until it was clear to him that all these kids were committed to not go out and commit suicide that night on those Chicago streets.
Now we've got to go all out to make Chicago an open city. Now somebody may say, why is it that you emphasize this? Why shouldn't we be satisfied to stay in our community, so to speak, and in our ghetto? That isn't the issue. The main issue is this. Whenever you segregate a minority, you inevitably discriminate against that minority. That's the issue.
Dr. King decided that he was going to march in Cicero. Cicero is a suburb to the west of Chicago. It was not a place that you wanted to go or be. Our job was to watch King and to keep danger from occurring to him. Now, King, of course, had no fear. He didn't want to appear to be surrounded by bodyguards. He didn't want to appear to be afraid.
As we'd marched down the streets, it was disheartening to hear workers saying, "There's John," or "There's Mary," that worked in my plant or in my office, and they are now swearing at us, throwing bricks, firecrackers.
And one guy hit King with a brick in the Cicero March and gashed him in the head. And we caught him. And the police had to help rescue him from those who caught him.
Were your hands up today? Yes, uh-huh.
All right?
I think so.
We had walked for I don't know how many miles. And when we got back to the park where our cars were, they were on fire. As Dr. King said, it was one of the worst situations that he had been in.
I think it's one of the most tragic pictures of man's inhumanity to man that I've ever seen. I've been in Mississippi and Alabama, but I can assure you that the hatred and the hostility here are really deeper than what I've seen in Alabama and Mississippi.
Why is it so important, for instance, that a Negro move into Cicero, Illinois?
Well, I wouldn't only say Cicero. I would say...
I understand, but as an example.
It's important because it is humiliating to say to anybody that because of your race you must be confined to a certain area.
But don't you find that the American people are getting a little bit tired, truly, of the whole civil rights struggle? Right or wrong? Do you sense that?
I don't know. I would say that that's true of some people.
The New York Times, for instance, calls for a moratorium on demonstrations and marches.
America did not rise up and say, we're going to change Chicago because they're hitting Dr. King with a brick and because thousands and thousands of people are marching through the streets of Chicago behind this movement. What was distinctive about Chicago was that there was no national response. The historical pattern of the movement was not to bowl over the local opponents. It was to mobilize the nation to do something, and they did not do that in Chicago.
By 1967, Martin Luther King was tired. He'd not only been doing this for 12 years, and, you know, every day the phone had rung for 12 years from people telling him he had to come here, he had to do this, he had to go there, he had to speak here, he had to go on television. I mean, the pull of all the semi-enfranchised of a very rich society, that had worn him down.
He was never sick. He was strong as a bull, but he could never get any rest. And sometimes he'd go in just for a checkup. And this was sort of an annual checkup. He did a couple of things regularly in his life. He almost always, right after Christmas, went down to Jamaica to think about where he was going the next year and to start